right, thank you, John. How you guys doing out there today? All right, awesome. I am honored to be here today for the inaugural Toolbox lunch here in San Antonio. Thanks to Tom and John and everybody involved with this wonderful organization for inviting me. It's also really cool to see some of the Houston Toolbox guys and the Austin Toolbox guys here today to be a part of this event. The first time I took part in a Toolbox event, I was actually president of the Houston Astros, and at the time, we'd already won a World Series, and man, we just had this great run going, and we were getting called a lot to give talks. And it was always about the team, who's coming up, who's going down, what's everything looking like. And a guy named David Olfke, who's a buddy of mine from church in Houston, called me and said, hey, I want you to come out to Houston Country Club and be a part of this men's group and come give a talk. And so automatically I was like, yeah, sure, we're going to make this trade, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, no, this is a different deal. And I'm like, what's it called? And he said, it's called Toolbox. Now, obviously, when I heard that really strange name, I was like, Toolbox, well, what is this Toolbox, And I thought John did a good job of explaining it. But at the time, he said, man, I just need you to come out and tell some war stories from the world and how God helped you get through tough times. And so that's a pretty wide range. It's unlike a talk I'd ever really given before. And so I signed up for it, and I said, yeah, happy to do it. And so that's really what I'm going to kind of do today, is what I did that first time I spoke at Toolbox, is really just share my story and really share my story of growing up in the game of baseball and some of the challenges I've had personally and professionally through that time. But before I get into that, if you really look around this room today, and I love what John said, manly rumble. You look around, I see entrepreneurs, I see business leaders, I see hired guns, there's coaches, there's teachers, community leaders. This room is filled today with really successful people. And I think when the world looks at us, anyone that's kind of quote unquote an achiever, I think people think, hey man, those guys had it easy, whatever. Entrepreneur, that guy just had a good idea, it was easy for him. Family business, oh, that guy's some rich kid, his dad just gave him a job. Whatever it is, the world looks at people that succeed many times as just having a path that was easily paved for them. And so, I think the reality is, and we know it because everybody's thinking about it right now, is that all of us have had challenges. I think all of us have had doubts and times of weakness, and sharing these stories as this group grows over time and as we bond and you build those levels of trust, you're going to see the commonality among your fellow man in Toolbox that we all have doubts, and I'm going to talk about mine here in a minute. But it's easy to remember when you're a Christian that there was only one perfect person in this world, and that was Jesus Christ, and the rest of us always fall short. So guess what? You're not alone. I'm there with you. Everybody in this room is there with you. And so that's really what I love about Toolbox. Today's the kickoff event, but as you guys come to this more and more, you're going to find that this is really a great place for all of us to connect about life and share from our experiences. And really that's what I hope I do today with you guys, and that you'll see Christ, his work through my life and through my story. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. John did a good job. Most of the time, and I got introduced the other day like this, and it's going to be forever, there was a small period where it would be, that's Victoria's dad, or Ella's dad, or Jackson's dad, but pretty much 99% of the time I get introduced as Nolan Ryan's son. So that's what most people know me as. And I tell everybody, growing up as Nolan Ryan's son was an incredible, childhood. I really lived every kid's dream. Playing ball at Fenway, Dodger Stadium, flying team charters, working in the clubhouse, Jose Cruz and Alan Ashby and Art Howe and all those guys were the guys that I grew up with. And so it was really, really super cool. I was a pretty good ball player myself. I went off, played 1 year at the University of Texas, ended up transferring, going to TCU to be closer to my dad and a guy named Tom House. I've been a sports executive for over 25 years. I've been a husband to Nicole for 28 years, come October 19th, and I'm the father of 3 really incredible adult children. And so with all of that kind of quote-unquote success, as I said earlier, people think life comes easy. But I think the reality is in this journey that I'm going to share with you guys today there's a lot of times that I've asked myself, do I measure up? I mean, there's times where that doubt sets in no matter how much success you've had. Am I good enough? Do I deserve this opportunity? Do I deserve what God has given me? And I think early in my life, some of that doubt came from having a dad that was famous. And there's a lot of people that come in family business. It's hard to be the son. When your dad's the owner of the business, or your dad's a major leaguer, or your dad was mayor, or whatever, it's hard to be the kid, to forge your own identity. And I used to call it, just kidding, like the curse of Nolan Ryan's son, is that if I went out and had a great game, struck out 13, 14, 15, I could strike out 20. People would be like, man, Nolan Ryan's son, of course he's going to strike out 20. I went out and had a bad game, walked the bases loaded in the first inning. I mean, it's like, yeah, he's not anywhere near his dad. I mean, so total lose-lose, if you look at it that way. So I think I always fought those doubts as a kid coming up. Am I getting this opportunity because I'm Nolan Ryan's son? And I used to have a saying that, you know what, being Nolan Ryan's son might get me in the game, and it might have, but it never got anybody out for me. And I tell people, it didn't make me all conference, it didn't make me drafted, and it did not make me get released when I couldn't get anybody out in pro ball. So, I think those doubts are real, but what I've been able to do is try to live out the plan that God has for my life. And so, I think that challenge for all of us is trusting what is God's plan for your life. And I put the reality is that, and I wrote a couple things down, that we all have doubts from time to time. And it's really very, very human for all of us to compare ourselves to others. It's just, unfortunately, what this world's become. Comparisons are a massive trap that you can fall into very, very easily. And I will say, I was blessed to have incredible human beings as parents. Ruth and Nolan Ryan were tremendous parents to me. And they encouraged me always to look at the gifts God had given me and not compare myself to others. And it helped when you grow up with somebody famous as a dad. And my father used to say to me all the time, he's like, look, don't compare yourself to me. He'd be like, Roger Clemens shouldn't compare himself to me. And if you look at it and say, Roger Clemens was coming out of UT and everybody compared him to Nolan Ryan. Hey, he's going to be the next Nolan Ryan. Well, guess what? Roger Clemens never had a no-hitter. My dad had 7. But Roger Clemens had 7 Cy Youngs, and my dad never had one. They're both going to be in the Hall of Fame, and they both have 300 wins, and they're both great players. They were never the same person, so why compare each other? So I think the act of comparison in life is really setting yourself up for failure. There's just no doubt about it. So I never tried to live up to being Nolan Ryan, the player, but I did try to live up to him as Nolan Ryan, the person. But I think lots of us ask ourselves all the time, do we measure up? Do we measure up in work? Do we measure up in our worth and our net worth and money? Do we measure up in prestige and the title you have at work? Whatever it is, there's just a lot of measuring up that goes on all the time. And I think the beauty about being a Christian is that none of us are ever going to measure up. That's the honest truth. None of us are ever going to measure up. There's only been one perfect person, and that is Jesus Christ. And I think the sooner you come to realize that, the better that you will be. And as I did that, I had some notes, and they stuck together right here. All right, there we go. So what I wanted to talk about really was kind of how I found Christ and how I sort of matured into this position that I'm sharing with you guys today. I think there's so many people that have incredible testimonies of how they've come to Christ. And the ones that all of us have heard them, and all of us have them, if you're a Christian. But the ones that seem to be dramatic are always the person that kind of pulled themselves out of like living under a bridge or, being an alcoholic or like being in jail, whatever. Unfortunately, I don't have that story, so you're not going to get that one today. My story is really kind of like baking a cake. It was a slow bake. You turned the oven on and you kind of waited. I used to tell people all the time, growing up in baseball, we were like traveling gypsies. So when I was born, my dad was with the Mets, and I was born in Houston. And then, he got traded to the Angels. So we would leave Houston in February. We would go to Arizona. We'd be in Arizona till, April. Then we'd go to California, and then we'd be in California till October, and then we'd come back to Houston. So we truly were kind of like this band of traveling gypsies. But my parents made it a priority to get to the church that had monthly services. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek. We weren't regular anywhere, but it was always in the background. We would go somewhere and we would find baseball chapel. We would find a church. We'd come home in the off season in Alvin. You know, my parents would take me to Sunday school. We went to the Methodist church there in town. And so probably didn't have a personal relationship with Christ, but church was part of our DNA and who we were, and we were Christians. Well, in 1979, I was 7 years old, and something tragic happened to me. Has anybody here seen the movie we made on my dad called Facing Nolan at all? Okay, we had a few. So in 1979, I was playing across the street. My next door neighbor was Rod Carew, believe it or not, and then on the other side of the street was a guy that, I don't know how many kids he had, but he had a bunch of them, so we were always playing in that guy's yard. And we were over there playing baseball, and these older kids came down, and they tried to take our jerseys away from us. We had just gotten our Pee Wee jerseys, and I broke away and tried to run back to my house, and a 16-year-old girl ran me over with a car. And I lost my kidney and my spleen, broke my femur, and I was laying in the middle of the street at 7, almost 8 years old, in shock, and just remembering praying to God, please don't let me die. Please don't let me die. That's all I could remember before I eventually blacked out. And when I woke up in the hospital, like I said, I had had my kidney and spleen removed. I had internal bleeding, and I was very, very lucky to have been alive. In 10 weeks, really basically the whole summer, 2.5 months, I was in the hospital. And when I got out, I had a body cast back in the day. I think that was the way they did. Just wrap them all up. He'll be good, let him go. When I finally got out of that body cast, 5 months later, I just felt like God had a plan for my life. He had saved me and had a plan for my life, and it was really a life-changing experience for me. And so out of that deep belief that God had a plan for my life, I set off on a road of almost a little bit of manifest destiny in my own mind that He had great things in store for me. And that's an awesome feeling. It's an awesome thing to have. But my challenge, my personal challenge as a Christian, has been fighting what I want for my life with what God wants for my life. And I came out of that thinking, man, I know exactly what God wants for my life. He wants me to do big things, and here I go. And every time I went down this road, He would correct me. And so I'll give you a perfect example. I'm sitting with some Aggies over here. My daughters are Aggies now. I'm like a walk-on Aggie now. But growing up, I wanted to be a Longhorn. That's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be like Roger Clemens and Spike Goen and all those guys that won the World Series. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to the University of Texas, got to have a game where I played against my dad, and rolled into what I thought was going to be my dream opportunity. And ended up finding myself not playing a lot, not making good grades, going out too much, living the Austin life, and was deeply, deeply, deeply unhappy. Unhappy with every part of my life. When I showed up the first day on campus, I thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. And by the end of the first season, I was absolutely miserable inside and out. And I ended up transferring to TCU. I didn't know anything about TCU, had no desire to go to TCU, thought Christian school, I don't want to go to TCU. But I went because my dad was playing for the Rangers, and he had a pitching coach named Tom House, if anybody's ever seen $1 Million Arm. And Tom committed that if I came up, he'd work with me and help me to sort of maximize myself as a pitcher. And so I did it, but a funny thing happened at TCU. I grew deeper in my faith and closer to Christ through a group called FCA, if anybody's ever been involved with FCA, and got connected with a great group of people. Ended up meeting my wife at TCU, who was a college basketball player. Ended up meeting some of my best friends at TCU. And sure enough, at the end of 1994, our Horned Frogs won the Southwest Conference, swept the University of Texas for the first time in 25 years, and went to the regionals the first time ever in the school's history. And since that team, they've had really, really good baseball for a long time. And so it's funny. What I wanted was not what God wanted. And so I go off to TCU, and I end up getting drafted by the Texas Rangers in the 15th round. And I go off to play in the minor leagues. I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. I never honestly felt that I would ever be Nolan Ryan, and didn't have the desire to compare myself to him. But I felt like I would be a Major League Baseball player just because my dad was one. And I'm playing college baseball. I figured, man, it's done deal. I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. Well, I went off in the minors, and it was much harder than I ever thought it was going to be. you quickly find out that you may be pretty good in college, but actually somebody has to be smart enough to get in, and everybody has to be 18 to, in the old days, maybe 23. And you show up the first day in spring training, and you got 16-year-old kids from the Dominican and dudes that are coming out of prison and 35-year-old guys, and you're like, what in the world did I get myself into over here? And people from all around the world. And I thought, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. Well, my third season, I showed up in spring training, and before I got into the locker room in spring training, the clubhouse manager tried to grab me, and as I walked around the corner, everything had been taken out of my locker, gone, and they had it boxed up. And he was like, I was supposed to catch you before you came in there. And you go in thinking, in a week, I'm going to be going to Tulsa or Oklahoma City, and I'm on my path to standing in the parking lot with all your stuff in a box, wondering, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? But not just, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm a failure. I'm not a major leaguer. Once again, I'm not living up to what people think, the world thinks of me, being Nolan Ryan's son, me being a former college baseball player, someone that got drafted that a team gave money to and thought was going to be their future. And so it was another, once again, extremely tough time for me. But the funny thing was, I had always planned on being a major league player. Never had thought about being a major league executive or professional sports executive. And before I left that day, Reid Nichols, who ran the minor league, said, hey, we want to talk to you in here. We would love for you to come to work for the Texas Rangers. And of course, at the time, I was like, forget that, But as I went back to Fort Worth and started thinking about it more, I thought, you know what, I have a passion for baseball. Maybe this is God pushing me in this direction. And I ended up going to work for the Texas Rangers. After 1 year of working there, I was sitting at the ballpark one night, and I said, why don't we have more minor league teams in the state of Texas? I had never been to a minor league baseball game till the very first one I had ever played in. I knew that San Antonio had the Missions, and I knew they were Dodgers, but I lived in Houston. I grew up in the big leagues. I didn't know of another team. There was one in El Paso, and there was one in Midland, and that was it. And when I got to the minors, I was like, this is incredible. Family entertainment, fun, big league experience, cost effective. Why is this not everywhere in our state? And so I set out to find out why and start into the process. And so one night I came home, got married in college to my wife, and she was still in school. And I came home from the ballpark working with the Rangers. I said, I know what I want to do. Let's move to Austin, and let's bring a professional baseball team to Austin. And of course, like any good wife, it doesn't matter if you've been married a day or 28 years, she gave me all like, great idea, I'm going back to bed. I mean, that was it. Nothing. I'm having this epiphany, and it was like, drool out of her mouth. She hates when I say that, but it was true. And so guess what? We went down to the Austin market because it was the largest market in the country that didn't have professional baseball. We found a team in Jackson, Mississippi that was the Astros AA. We passed an election in Round Rock, Texas, and in 2000, we really changed what minor league baseball was because we built the first ever major league stadium on a minor league scale in Round Rock, Texas. And you've been to the Dell Diamond, you know what I mean. It's unlike any experience. And for me, the incredible thing has been Amarillo has a new stadium and a team today. Frisco has a new stadium and a team today. Sugar Land has a new stadium and a team today. Corpus Christi, which we started, has a new team today. Baseball has exploded in this state, all because God's plan was better than my plan. And at the time, I had no idea where he was leading me. And so after Round Rock, we went down and started Corpus Christi in 2005. My family and I owned the Astros AAA and Astros AA, and we went to the World Series. And even though we got swept, we were in the first ever World Series in the state of Texas, and it was incredible. And then out of that came the opportunity for my dad to go to the Texas Rangers in 2008 and be their CEO, which eventually led to us being owners in the team, our family, which eventually led to Jim Crane calling me in 2013 and saying, hey, I want you to come to Houston and be my president and lead the Houston Astros. And for that 1 year, every time the Astros and Rangers played each other, my dad and I would sit together, and we don't know that there's ever been another father-son combo that were both presidents of major league teams, but it was really cool. They killed us that year. We were terrible. They destroyed us, but it was still fun to go to the game with them. And so, once again, God sending me down a path that I could never have imagined my wildest dreams as a kid, I never imagined my dad and I would both be presidents of major league teams, sitting together. His dad passed when he was, 20-something years old, got to see him play in the World Series one time, but never got to see him. And so just having that moment was incredible, was absolutely incredible. But the Astros was more than that for me. It was my childhood team. I grew up loving those guys. And for a city that had known nothing but heartbreak before the Astros, you thought of Houston as losers. I mean, Oilers blow a lead to the Steelers, team leaves. Cougars lose every year. Astros lose every year. It was all losers. And when we won the World Series in 2017, I cried like an absolute baby, not because of the happiness that it brought for us that worked every day, but for the happiness that it brought to all the people I went to high school with, and that parents and grandparents that just wanted to be from a place, and San Antonio's had it a lot with the Spurs, that they could wear the name of their town on a shirt and feel like they were winners. And it was an incredible, incredible experience. And I used to tell folks, when you get into sports, you want to do three things. You want to have a World Series parade or a championship parade. You want to get a ring, and you want to go to the White House. And we got to do all three of them that year. And if I was really a good speaker, I'd pull out my World Series ring right now, but I keep it in the box because it got scratched up so much. But those three experiences were absolutely incredible. And whether it was riding on that float in downtown or having that ring ceremony on the field or, meeting Trump in the White House, it was, once again, a moment where I stepped back and said, God's plan was better than any selfish plan that I could have ever had. And, I think that's really God's gift to all of us is that he has plans that are bigger than ours. And I think out of all my time in Houston, the greatest gift he gave me was nothing about baseball or sports or personally. It was the connection and the relationship to Second Baptist Church. And so I tell everybody I'm a walk-on Aggie now, and I guess I'm a walk-on Baptist. I grew up Methodist, and a lady I worked with in Houston said, "You're going the wrong way. I grew up Baptist, now I'm going Methodist, But we ended up, because of a guy named Terry Poole, who played with my dad, and a guy named Craig Reynolds, they had incredible kids. And as I was a little bit older than, said, I want to have my kids be like their kids. Just incredible human beings. And they both all graduated from Second Baptist School. And so when we moved to Houston, we started going to church there. We started going to school there. And, I look up now, and it's had a huge impact. So once again, growing in my faith through decisions that I really never made on my own, that were led to me through God. The 8 years in Houston, man, we were so locked in. Everything was going great. School, family. 2018, we had an incredible team. We lost to the Red Sox. They won the World Series. 2019, a home team doesn't win a game. We lose in 7. To the Washington Nationals. I mean, really, for a decade, the World Series has gone through Houston. Whoever's beat the Astros ended up winning the World Series if it wasn't them. And into the 2019 World Series, I had been negotiating a new contract, which would be my third with the Astros. And literally, out of the blue, like November 1st or 2nd, I got a text from our owner after having a lot of discussions with him that just said, "Hey, appreciate all you've done. I just don't need a president anymore. I'm going to make my son president and appreciate you, but I'm not going to renew your contract." And here I am, once again, with thinking that I had life figured out, that I had everything I wanted. It's humiliating when you have a public job and you lose it. Everywhere I went, what happened? What did you do? Instantly, people think, there was something nefarious, something wrong, because here we are winning and setting all these records. My kids cried for days. Are we going to have to leave our school that we love so much? Are we going to have to move out of Houston? What's this mean for us? But I can honestly say it's the first time in my life that as I sat back and prayed about what's the next step going to be, that I truly felt a sense of calm that I had never felt in many of the other trials that I had in my life. And it's because I've fully turned myself over to God, that whatever his plan is going to be better than my plan. because I never could have imagined all the things that he had put before this opportunity. And so I just took the approach that when one door closes, another's going to open, and I can't wait to see what that door is going to be. And, 20 was a crazy year, as we all know. I ended up signing on as a consultant to help, Jim's son transition. But what happened? COVID hit. They canceled, had layoffs, canceled the minor league season, played in front of no fans. And here I was with a guaranteed contract when everybody else was getting laid off, with an opportunity to sit back with my family and think about what's the next step and listen to God's plan for my life. And that plan led me here to San Antonio to be partners with Bruce Hill and Bob Cohen and all these other wonderful owners in the San Antonio missions. And I can say I've always loved San Antonio. I always have wanted to buy this team. I used to call DG Elmore every single year because we had the team in Corpus, we had the team in Austin, and be like, man, please sell me this team. You guys are out of state, you guys never come here. And he had talked to me about it, but he had also talked to Bruce about it that I didn't know. And I had never met Bruce Hill before, or Randy Smith or Hope or David Robinson or any of the wonderful folks that are with us. And it was the first time I met him that it felt like this is God's plan, that all of us coming together can do something greater than all of us alone or individually. And so, I think this Toolbox lunch today, I would have never thought that I would be here, in San Antonio helping kick off this event. So God's plan for all of us, if you just learn to trust it, is just so good, so very, very good. The fun fact for everybody here is that Nolan Ryan Sr., my grandfather, who unfortunately I never met because he passed before I was born in San Antonio, went to high school in San Antonio. My dad's brother's buried right down the road at Fort Sam. He was a colonel out at Randolph for many, many years, and all my cousins went to Schertz, Clements High School. So being here has really come full circle for us in a cool way. And as I look back, really I'm 52 now, so past the halfway point, hopefully maybe halfway point. I can just tell you that my own personal selfish wants and desires, even if they were well-intentioned, they still rise up all the time. But the older I've gotten, the more I've learned to trust. I've found God just puts me in the very best places that he can be. His vision is bigger than my vision. And when I've been disappointed or felt like a failure or felt like I didn't measure up, he's opened doors to successes that I couldn't even imagine. And so I think about my favorite verse a lot. It's Luke 12:48. To whom much is given, much is expected. And, I feel like that's been my life, is that I've been given some incredible, incredible opportunities. And so it's really up to me to make the most of those opportunities and see those opportunities. And I think that's what we have here in San Antonio is, if I look at not being a major leaguer and what building and being a sports executive, and when we do this new stadium in downtown, it'll be my 5th one. I've got to build stadiums all over the state of Texas. I've got to grow the game of baseball, which puts role models in communities and gives fans an opportunity to see young players like the Bregmans and the Altuves and the Springers and all of these great guys that have played for me over the years chase their dreams. It's a place for family entertainment. Where else in today's world can you go with a grandparent and a grandchild or a mom and a daughter and go out and everybody in the family can have a great time? So out of this whole adventure that I've been on, it's really about improving lives and communities. We've been able to do that with our Nolan Ryan Foundation. We passed the 50-50 raffle. Probably everybody here voted on it as a constitutional amendment. Now clubs are giving back hundreds of thousands of dollars in the community every year. We're going to do that with the 1888 San Antonio Baseball Foundation. And so I look back and say, it wasn't a selfish desire to be a Major League Baseball player. God had a plan for me to grow baseball in communities around the state of Texas, and I'm honored that he gave me that opportunity, and I know there's more to come. And so I'll close with this. Excited about the missions, as you know, in the ownership group. I left City Council a minute ago. We got there at 8:30. At 11, we were just going on. So there were 150 people signed up to speak. If you do 2 to 3 minutes a person, that'll be about 6 o'clock tonight that they'll probably vote. So I'm going to roll in. Nobody's even going to know I was here at this event. But our plan is to build a new stadium downtown, to have a place that will be a community gathering spot for over 100 nights a year, that will bring all kinds of events to the downtown area, that will be a better proximity for everybody in the community, that will kick off development on the north end of downtown, that will highlight this incredible asset of San Pedro Creek. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand in cities like Charlotte and Nashville and Vegas and Corpus Christi, and you can go on and on and on and on. This stadium is going to change downtown and is going to bring joy to people's lives, for many, many years to come. And so I will end with that. I believe God has something big in store for all of us in San Antonio, and I'm just excited to be a very, very small part of it. And thank you guys so much for this opportunity to speak today.
All right, that was awesome. You stay right here, and we'll get.
Okay.
Is this on? Is this on? I don't think it is. Hello. It is. Thanks.
Hey, welcome, guys. I'm Tom Dowd, Executive Director of Toolbox, and that was amazing. And Reid is kind enough to take a few questions from the crowd before we bust out today. So I'm sure in regard to his story or his current mission with the missions or whatever.
Anything you want, Astros,
Anything you
Rangers,
want.
baseball, anything.
So anybody got a question for Reid here today? Carl.
My name is Carl Wynn. I'm from Houston. Thank you for your story. My question to you is, what can we do, as a group of people here today to help you, contribute to you to help you hit your goals, for what you desire to do in our state, right? I mean, I'm not from Houston, but just thinking through, like, how can we help contribute to you, hitting some of those goals that you have to honor God with the resources, the opportunity He's giving you?
I've never had that question before. I think the greatest thing we can all do, and what we're missing today in this world with a lot of broken families and a lot of people that don't have hope, is to continue to minister Christ through the way you live your life and through your actions. And, being a member of a church, I think, is important, and making sure that whether it's a small group or a Bible study or whatever, that somehow you're growing the kingdom. And another weakness I have is not preaching the gospel probably enough. I've tried to do it more through my actions. If opportunities like this come about, I love to share my story. But there's many times that I walk away from someone and I say, God, I wish I would have stepped out and spoke the word, because I could feel it, I could sense it, but I was scared. And it sounds goofy, but it's having that courage to make that first interaction. I think if everybody in this room could do it, and there may not be everybody in here that's a believer, this may be your first opportunity to come. But my wife's had it before. Houston is a really multicultural place, and she has friends that are of several faiths. And many times they come to her and say, why is it you guys always seem so happy? Why is it that you and your kids get along so well? Why is it? And it's not a great secret. It's that, we're Christians and we've put Christ first, and He's led us down the correct path. So I think that would be, if anybody in this room could do that, I think our world would be a better place.
Awesome. Anything else? Way in the back, they got you right there.
Hey, Reid, thank you. Andrew Rouse from Dripping Springs. What advice would you give to fathers that have young sons that are growing up into manhood, and how you would develop that relationship with them?
So you say fatherhood?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's pretty interesting, and I didn't get into this either, but my wife was a Division I college basketball player, and I was obviously a college baseball player. And you probably couldn't have two more type A people being married to one another. And my mom was like, we like her, but are y'all sure y'all going to get along? We're both very type A. My son was born with cerebral palsy, and up until he was born, first child, he's going to be the next right-hander, and all these things. And suddenly you go from having these dreams and aspirations to a human being that it's coming out like we're going to be unfair day one because we're so type A, to just being glad that he's alive and hoping that he can walk and talk and be cognitively normal. And so my son's amazing. He has cerebral palsy. He's affected on the right side of his body. He has no fine motor skills at all, but he drives. He played college baseball through like Jim Abbott. He did not blow it by anybody, but he could spin it and got to play a little Division III baseball. And that was another way of God hitting me on the head and saying, this isn't your plan. And I learned through that to just cherish every moment, because I didn't know that he was going to get beyond T-ball, that he'd even get to play coach pitch, that he'd even get to make a high school team, much less get to play in college. And so every time I sat on a bucket and caught him or got to go to a game, man, it was gravy. It was just about us being together with no expectation of me yelling at him or, any of the bad things that come about. And I think it set the tone for my two daughters that both were great athletes and both had the opportunity to play in college.
That's good. All right, maybe one more. Maybe I got one? You're right there.
Hey, Reid. I'm from Houston. Grew up, Nolan Ryan was my hero, so I'm very honored to get to be here today. Thank you for everything that you said. If City Council approves the stadium today, when is the first game going to be?
It'll be April of 2028, and what's happening, without getting too much in the details, today's just going to be the first step in what's going to be several other steps, including a county vote. And really, Randy Smith likes to say, we've got to get three things before we can get baseball going. We've got to get the city vote to create a TERS, which is a little taxing district. We have to get a county vote, and then we have to entice $1 billion of development to be built in that area. So this actually may not be the hardest part today. It may be the most painful public part, but it'll be April 2028, and there's a lot of reasons why, and really it's that we have to get these other assets built in this area, that we're going to be able to take the tax increment as well as our rent payment, as well as our cash payment, as well as the ticket tax, and be able to pay the bonds down. So it's still going to be a couple years. You know what? Every place I've worked, so I've been in Round Rock, Corpus Christi. We did a stadium in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then I built the Astros facility with the Washington Nationals in West Palm Beach. There are no apples to apples because each one has different economics, and you go into doing these things with the goal of how do we achieve the stadium. And so this is going to be a TERS, which will mean we have to bring private development, and then the growth of the property tax will be able to recoup to pay the bonds on the stadium till it's paid off, and then the city and county will all get the tax money back. In Florida, we had the Nationals, we had the Astros, we had the state of Florida, we had Palm Beach County and Palm Beach City. And it was this like 5 waterfall. Round Rock was hotel motel tax. Corpus Christi was a 1/8 cent sales tax. So every one is unique. And it really comes down to the people. I think what's made this interesting has been it's not been about our financing plan as much as it's been about we are going to be displacing some residents from an apartment building we own. And it's not affordable housing, but it's market rate housing. It's actually 20% above market rate, but it's only 750 square foot units, and there's nothing comparable of that size. And so it's trying to come up with how we take care of all those people. But if you know Bruce Hill and Randy Smith and Hope and Bob, that's in the DNA of every one of these people. And I think that's been great because now we're able, I think, to have a plan that everybody feels good about to make sure we're taking care of these folks just like they were our family.
That's great. Well, hey, one big hand for Reid Ryan. Thank you, Reid.